Hey, what's up guys, Mikey here. I've always wondered what it's like to be the comic relief character in a movie or TV show. You become a fan favorite during the original because you're funny, but then you get the lead role of your own movie or TV show and it ends up being horrible, which ruins the reputation of the franchise, the company, and the character. But there is also that rare instance where that program is planned but dropped and then lost to time and then eventually resurfaces.
Gibby!
I'm genuinely curious who watched the original show and actually wanted him to have his own series. Drake and Josh, Zoe 101, iCarly, Victorious. Some of the most prolific live-action Nickelodeon shows, no question. They were all created by the same guy and often seem to be connected and be a part of the same universe, which is especially evident by the iCarly Victorious crossover, I Party with Victorious, and the Zoe 101 episode that features Drake Bell. Out of all four of those shows, iCarly had the most episodes and the longest runtime out of all of them. The other shows couldn't even make it to 69 episodes, and Victorious didn't even make it to its official 3-year anniversary before being cancelled. After that emotional whiplash, Sam and Cat was created with the intention of it being a new companion/sister show to Victorious, and meant to increase the popularity of Ariana Grande at the time. Similar to the Moody's Point sketch from The Amanda Show, created with the intention to be a full-fledged series to increase Amanda Bynes' popularity. This didn't happen, and Sam and Cat was the only Dan Schneider show on the air during that time it was on. It ended only 13 months into its original run, with just barely less episodes than The Amanda Show. And after that, Dan Schneider would go on to create 2 more live-action shows, as well as this animated program, which would be his last works with Nickelodeon before finally leaving in March 2018. However, after iCarly ended, he did have intentions of creating another spin-off of that show to run alongside Sam and Cat.
Oh, really?
This one would have been focused on Gibby.
Oh, really?
In addition to Sam Puckett, Gibby was also a recognizable character during the series' run. During the first 3 seasons, Gibby was only a recurring character who did make more appearances gradually as the show went on. And as of season 4, he was upgraded from recurring to main, as indicated by Noah Monk being added to the opening credits starting with season 4. And he would stay a main character and appear in every episode for the rest of the show. When iCarly ended, there was intention to make more shows starring some of the other characters. Sam and Cat would take Sam Puckett and Cat Valentine from iCarly and Victorious respectively, and was intended on being a girl version of Drake and Josh. Lots of potential there, but the show was so boring and didn't even come close to reaching the heights of Drake and Josh. There was also going to be a show where Gibby was the main character and would come on roughly around the same time of Sam and Cat. The premise of this show would have been about Gibby meeting 4 socially awkward middle school kids and hanging around them as he starts working at a recreational center. Not much is known about this show, but it would have been the first show that Dan Schneider created for Nickelodeon with a male main character since Drake and Josh, and it would have been the first show he created here with only a single male lead/title character. Knowing his history with Nickelodeon, that would have been interesting to see, to say the least. The pilot for this show was being worked on all the way back as July 2012. On August 1st, the finalized shooting script was finished. Filming began around that time, and in August 31st, Dan Schneider stated that he was editing the pilot for the show and was laughing hard and said it was so funny and expressed how talented Noah Monk was as Gibby. The show is planned to have a first season of 20 episodes, but not much is known about anything after the pilot. According to the wiki, we know about the next 6 episodes, at least most of them by their titles, but whenever I try to find the external sources, they are no longer there. So clearly the show was never picked up or continued after the pilot episode was finished. And after that, the pilot and especially the show never saw the light of day again. After that happened, Dan Schneider's first show with a single male main/titled character became Henry Danger, a show about a kid who gets a part-time job as a superhero sidekick. This premiered in 2014 and actually continued beyond Dan's departure from the network. Now, I honestly was not sure how I felt about seeing this new show focused around Gibby. I had mixed feelings about Sam and Cat, and I had even more questions about Gibby.
Why was Gibby's nickname, well, Gibby?
Since he was supposed to be a mentor figure for the 4 kids, how would that work? What exactly would he teach them? And how long can the iCarly brand and characters really be kept alive for? Well, after the pilot was cancelled, it was lost to time. However, in July 2021, the finalized script for the Gibby pilot leaked online. It was a cool glimpse to see what it was going to look like, but I didn't really know about the script until 2024. And then, in the fall of 2023, the full edited rough cut of the pilot leaked online. The first glimpse into what would have been the final show created by Dan Schneider that prominently featured a returning actor that was a main character in one of his previous works. Was the pilot everything we hoped for? Well, we'll get to that. I watched the pilot a couple times. With one of those, I watched and looked at the script to see if anything would differ. I won't be going through this episode the way I do with SpongeBob because I don't know how legal or moral it is to be showing this. So I'll do a more rapid-fire breakdown of the plot and explain my thoughts on most scenes in this episode as a whole later on. Let's get started. So the episode starts up at Ridgeway High School, and Gibby's pet weasel escaped its cage and bit a teacher's ass. Principal Franklin came in and he decided to punish Gibby by giving him Saturday detention. But Gibby planned on going to a weasel convention wearing Batman-themed outfits with his weasel.
Wow, they really have a convention for everything, don't they?
So Principal Franklin says that if Gibby gives up his study hall and works at the middle school cafeteria for the rest of the week, then no Saturday detention. So Gibby agrees.
Damn it, I wanted to see Gibby in Saturday detention.
The theme song isn't a theme song, it's Gibby's name being said over and over again. In the middle school cafeteria, some mean kids start picking on 4 outcasts, so Gibby steps in and defends them saying they're his friends, so they stop picking on the quartet. After school, the kids cling to Gibby like lost puppies and want him to hang out with them. So he hesitantly agrees and they go to the Bixby Rec Center, even though it means Gibby can't watch cheerleaders practice their moves.
Okay, so those cheerleaders want Gibby to watch them practice, but when I ask the same question to the cheerleaders in high school, I get laughed at and look like a jackass.
So they go to the rec center and Gibby finally learns the quartet's names. Winston, a guy who's a little paranoid, Markin, or Mark for short, who thinks he's a robot sent from the future, Flip, who sucks up way too much to anybody, and Jordy, the usual mean girl you'd see in a Dan Schneider show. But Gibby is still not having a good time, and it cuts to commercial according to the script. When it comes back, we see an unintelligent employee named Ozzy, and the manager of the rec center, Sierra, who Gibby starts hitting on even though she's 8 years older than him and has a boyfriend. When Gibby wasn't looking, Flip was bullied and the others didn't help. Gibby explained how friends help friends despite being scared. The bullies mentioned dodgeball on trampolines, so Gibby tries to show them how to play. But after a montage sequence, they didn't get better. Ozzy came in and he tried to work with Gibby to show how the game works, but he bounced so high that he got his head stuck in the ceiling. While he was taken away by the ambulance, Gibby offered to lock up the place for Sierra, and while she was hesitant at first, she agreed. And he was offered a job on the spot, and he agreed to it as long as he didn't have to put things in the women's restroom.
Is he being a virgin or an incel?
So after the emergency crew left, the quartet told Gibby that that was the most fun they had in forever. So they left while Gibby started to lock up. Then some robbers arrived and attacked Gibby. The quartet went back to the store because Markin forgot his jacket. They saw Gibby tied up, and despite the fact they were scared, they all agreed to help. They ran in and attacked the robbers with dodgeballs. Gibby untied himself and worked with the quartet to chase the robbers out. Gibby was thankful for the help and officially declared them all friends, and they're all happy. Yay! And the episode ends. Okay, that sure was an episode, alright? There's quite a bit to say about it. So first off, it's surreal to see some of the Ridgeway sets again. If my memory is correct, the last time I remember seeing this classroom set was the 2011 iCarly Victorious crossover, I Party with Victorious, and the last time the main hallway set was shown was the original finale, I Goodbye. Even though I don't remember Gibby's locker having air holes in it, I like the continuity with the original show, how Gibby still has the weasel that he got in the aforementioned finale. I love seeing Principal Franklin in here because this would have been an appearance in the franchise without Carly or Freddy before he reappeared in the iCarly revival in the early 2020s. There are some odd choices here, like how during the montage sequence, the song they used was I Got a Feeling by Flo Rida, and the establishing shot of the rec center uses Call Me Maybe by Carly Rae Jepsen. In my opinion, those two songs don't fit either of those scenes. I think a random Victoria song would have worked better for the first scene in the rec center, and literally anything would have worked better for the dodgeballs on trampoline sequence. The laugh track sound bites were definitely used a bit too much, and cheering sound bites were used in parts where they were completely unnecessary. Like when Principal Franklin gives Gibby his alternate punishment, or when Gibby gets his job at the rec center. I feel Ozzy, being as unintelligent as he is, doesn't work well since Gibby is already kinda dumb and was comic relief in the original show. Do we really need another comic relief character in this show? And while we're on the topic of characters, let's get into them. I'm personally not a fan of any of the characters in this show. As previously mentioned, Ozzy wasn't great since almost all the characters don't seem to have much common sense here. And Sierra I felt sorry for since a minor was hitting on her so much. And even then, she almost became stupid too by giving Gibby the job on the spot even though he only agreed to lock up the place so she could go to the hospital. She didn't even see how good of a job he did with his first time doing this responsibility. For the quartet, I honestly sometimes keep forgetting about them. I legit keep forgetting the names of the three guys here because neither of them are distinct enough in my opinion. The only reason I remember the girl's name is because she's the only girl out of the quartet, and even though she's the snarky character, there is nothing unique about her compared to other snarky girls from previous Dan Schneider sitcoms, like Jade from Victorious or Megan from Drake and Josh. I know this is only the first episode, and I'm sure the characters would have been fleshed out in future episodes, but this isn't a good impression of the characters if I can't remember their names after I watched the first one. Gibby was pretty consistent with how he was at the end of the original show, but I take some issues with Gibby being characterized this way. In the original show, he was still dumb, but I never found him insufferable, especially in the early seasons. There were quite a few moments where Gibby was likable in one way or another, such as in I Win a Date where he was too shy to talk to a girl he had a crush on, or I Psycho where he fights Nora Dershlet to save Carly, Sam, and Freddie. After I Party with Victorious, he became a lot dumber and there were times where he f***ed up the gang's mission. Like in I Lost My Head in Vegas where he got swindled into getting a moon rock and the guy stole all the gang's money while he wasn't looking. He wasn't the same at this point and I have no idea why this happened. Even the least smart character in Drake and Josh and Zoe 101 was more intelligent than Gibby in those later seasons. Dumb does not automatically equal funny. If maybe Gibby was characterized more like he was in the first 2 seasons or so, then he would be so much more likable in the spin-off. I find it hard to root for him here. He doesn't have a goal he's trying to accomplish. He finds himself stuck babysitting 4 lost puppies. At first he was very bored and felt like he was wasting his time, but things did get more interesting when he tried to show them how to play dodgeball on trampolines. Times like that he was smart enough to move the plot forward, which was nice. I also like seeing him stand up for the quartet when they were being picked on. But that scene is also brought down quite a bit when he talked about chicken nuggets after he broke up the fight. I just wanted him to shut up here. And the slow motion used here is the definition of unnecessary. Dude, it's a chicken nugget. Stop taking this so seriously. I also didn't really like Gibby asking for an alternate punishment, or some of the things he said to the robbers. Like when he was tied up and one of the bad guys tried to break his thumbs. Gibby told him not to do that because he needed both of his thumbs to wash his weasel. Lines like that I don't find funny at all. At least these days. And I really cringed when Gibby was hitting on the rec center manager. Especially since not only does she have a boyfriend, but is 24 while he is 16. I hated that so much. It's not cute, it's annoying. I also felt uncomfortable seeing him share a grape with his weasel. And I don't like that he named his weasel Wheezy. That being said, I do still like that Gibby was happy that he gave the quartet a fun day and said that they were friends now. And he was willing to work there to spend some time with them whenever they come over after school. So that's a nice character arc for Gibby, I guess. He learns that you can find friends where you least expect it, and even kids who may be socially offbeat have strengths too. And speaking of which, that is also the arc of the quartet. They learn to actually stand up for themselves despite how they are scared to do anything. They start off as being wimps in the school cafeteria, but then they stand up and help Gibby when he's being held hostage. And while that is nice, it does still come up short for me. But that's not about the characters, more so the story. There are some times where it feels like the episode drags on for too long, like the slow motion scene in the cafeteria, or the scene with the cheerleaders. That one adds nothing to the story, and the girls never appear or are mentioned again. Gibby's weasel is in the cold opening and gets Gibby in trouble when he brings him to school, and we basically forget it's even a thing for the rest of the episode. But I don't like seeing Principal Franklin become infertile. And as for the robbery scene, I feel like the criminals could be taken out of the episode and the story would have been exactly the same. After Gibby gets his job at the rec center, the kids say they've had a lot of fun with him. Gibby is happy he gave them a good time and would be hanging out with them a lot more since he's working there. The scene with the criminals didn't need to happen. Sure, this is a scene where the kids learn to step up and be brave, but it ultimately amounts to nothing. They wanted Gibby to hang out with them, and they got that. And at the end of the episode, Gibby thought the quartet would be so much more popular now, but then says that probably wouldn't happen because kids their age are jerks anyway. But that made me realize that the scene where they take down the criminals either shouldn't have happened in this episode at all, or the context should have been changed around. If Gibby and the quartet took down the robbers while more kids from school are watching, then the mean kids would have realized that the kids they were picking on actually had more to them than meets the eye, and they would stop being mean to them in the future. That's a good lesson to learn for an episode like this. But after the kids left the rec center, it felt like the story had wrapped up and anything with the criminals didn't need to happen. I know it's the pilot episode, and this is to establish the characters and the new locations rather than tell a compelling story. That's not my issue. But it feels like the criminal scene would have worked better for a season finale. The criminals come to the school to get back at Gibby for something that occurred halfway through the season, and the other kids are too scared to do anything. But the quartet step up and save Gibby, and at the same time, earn the respect of everybody else in the cafeteria. Then the other kids would stop being so mean to the quartet, and they'd be so much more popular, setting up an all-new dynamic with all the middle schoolers for the next season. That would have been great, even if that was a part of the storyline for the pilot itself, but nope. According to the script, there were 2 scenes omitted, scenes B and J. If those scenes were omitted, I have no idea what was going on with them, and it's clearly for the better. The script has some lines written here that weren't in the rough cut that leaked online, such as more moments of Gibby regretting his life choices not hanging out with the cheerleaders, a line where he told the robbers he only started working at Bixby 17 minutes ago, which would have been a lot better than the final line, by the way, and a scene where the kids talk to Gibby in the cafeteria after he stands up for them, but before they appear at his locker. In the final, there's a line where Gibby wonders why the kids aren't more popular, but in the script, that was replaced with Gibby being sad about not hanging with the cheerleaders again. There's also a line that says he and the Weasel will be wearing matching outfits, which was changed in the rough cut to him saying he will be Batman and the Weasel will be the Batweeze. Those are the only deleted scenes and lines from the script that stand out to me personally. I felt a bit awkward watching the kids at times, and I didn't think their dynamic with Gibby was really funny. The whole thing was so boring to me, and a little cringe at times. If I actually watched it as a teenager, I probably would have watched it because I watched all the other Nickelodeon shows the creator made, and I would have continued that tradition with this one. I might have said I liked it, but I probably would have been in denial about that. That was also the case with Sam and Cat. I thought I liked it, but when I went back and rewatched a couple episodes a few years ago, I kinda wonder why I even liked it in the first place. It's got nothing compared to the original iCarly and Victorious. But while I feel Sam and Cat had missed potential being a girl version of Drake and Josh, the Gibby show clearly had nothing going for it. It was an attempt to keep the iCarly characters alive by putting the comic relief character in the lead role. But I'm sure this decision was dropped after watching the pilot because Nickelodeon probably realized that Planet Sheen was a f***ing atrocity, which put Sheen Estevez, the comic relief of Jimmy Neutron, in the spotlight.
You must have accidentally designed your box with extra-dimensional geometry that's triggered by a sudden boost in electron...
Nap time!
Cars 2 also made Mater, the comic relief of Cars 1, the main focus, and we all know that worked. In retrospect, I am so glad that this show about Gibby was never fully greenlit. Dropping this show was Nickelodeon's most logical decision they made throughout the 2010s, which makes me question why the Patrick Star Show was greenlit at all. But I won't lie now, I have another thought. Instead of making Gibby mentor the quartet, I wonder what the show would have been like if Gibby instead got the Saturday detention and just befriended the other kids that were in detention with him, and the show would have followed their adventures instead. I know that's a parody of The Breakfast Club, and Victorious also did a parody of that, but in my opinion, this would have been so much more interesting to see. And this would have felt much more like an ensemble show like The Breakfast Club. I'm sure the characters there would have been way more interesting and relatable than having a guy with glasses think he's a robot sent from the distant future. I don't think this Gibby pilot is as bad as others make it out to be, but it's far from great. It's just really boring, and it's hard to get invested in anything the characters are doing, in my opinion. I felt that Dan Schneider's writing started going downhill after Victorious ended, and if this show came out, it would have only strengthened my stance. Sam and Cad kind of feels unnecessary looking back on it, and the Gibby show was the definition of too much. I won't deny it's a cool novelty to see what else the creator had planned after iCarly ended, and it's very fun that a piece of lost media has been discovered. That's always very satisfying and surreal to see happen in real life. But that applies to every piece of lost media for any TV show, movie, book, or video game franchise. This one ain't special. It's not great, but it's not the absolute worst thing I've ever seen. But as the first show that Dan Schneider would have created for Nickelodeon that only had one male lead title character, if I had to choose between getting this as a full show or Henry Danger,
while I'm content that the Gibby show was never fully greenlit, I will admit that watching the pilot after all these years of being lost is definitely a neat experience, even if the episode itself wasn't good. And that just makes me realize that comic relief character must actually have it pretty rough at times. Sure, they're funny, but they often get yelled at or humiliated by the other characters. But that also makes me wonder, what character would I be in a TV show? I'll just take this online personality test to determine what character I would be. Son of a